Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for the Wot Supp podcast. With your host, Stu, OG Industry Shannon, and Will warren-davey, new school formulator extraordinaire. We're talking all things supplements with insiders, athletes, experts, and more. So sit back, relax, and prepare to find out what's up.
Okay, g'day guys. Welcome to another episode of the Wot Supp podcast. We're back to where it all began. Well, maybe not right back to where it all began. We're pretty much where it all began. I think our first episode was in the music studio.
It was in a music studio, and we hired that as a last minute thing when we were going to be in the area when we had Matty Highgate on board as well.
Yep.
This was definitely the second. This was 100% the very next thing we did was straight in here.
So this is for those of you who don't recognise. This is basically the back of my store, the back of Universal Supplements. This is my little social media room / media room.
Master studio.
That's it. So, hey, here we are. You got my logo up there behind my head. I'm looking some sort of a saint.
It's angelic, isn't it? This is exciting, mate. This is cool because we don't get a chance to talk person to person, obviously. We're always we're doing it Zoom, we're doing it by correspondence, wherever we are, doing whatever we are. Today's cool though because we were going to bring it back a bit, weren't we? We're going to look at how the industry's going, some fun things in it, but really make it supplement focused again.
Yeah.
I think it was the game plan.
So I think, we've had a lot of, and I think it's good that we've been able to kind of delve away from the supplement space with some of our guests, which is awesome. But I think we always want to kind of stay true to that supplement loving customer base. So obviously we're going to do episodes where we meet different business owners and different experts in different fields, but coming back to the supplements, every now and then, I think it's a nice place for us and it kind of feels like home. So, I think that having a bit of a chat about, like you said, industry trends, what's going on out there is going to be a good place for us today. And I think probably necessary in the way that the industry has gone over the last at least 4 months.
Oh, yeah.
There's been some huge changes.
It's exploded. In
supplements, and there's been some huge changes in the way we formulate, what we're allowed to use, what we're allowed to say. So we might touch on that a little bit too, but a space that I wanted to talk about, and it's probably something that you're a little bit more well-versed in than me, is the protein space. I'm just basically, I wanted to bring up a few points that I get asked questions about every day in store. So I'm seeing the real people face to face
every day. So
I know what kind of questions are getting shot at me, and I think the biggest trend that I've seen change in the last probably 3 years is we used to have whey protein as just your sole protein. There was not really much else out there.
No, it took us long enough just to get just whey. Like just whey's nailed, really. We had that for just a good old-fashioned blend for forever. Just whey protein concentrate was just the thing. Hey, that was all we sold in the store. Maybe an isolate if you're getting a bit fancy and you want something post-workout. But that perhaps is whey.
I think that we've seen an explosion of different forms of protein over the last couple of years. So let's delve into those a little bit. So we've got at the moment, obviously you've still got your classic whey blend, which for me personally is still my go-to. It's still what I use. I can't fault a whey blend, so I see no reason to kind of
definitely
merge away from that.
It's the all-rounder. It's the most versatile, hey. Like it's just the old faithful that covers all bases. It's got a pretty good, and a blend when people listening here, you've got whey protein isolates, whey protein concentrates. There's micellar casein as well as is another one we see commonly. So a blend is usually these bad boys thrown in together to give you fast, medium, and slow release to sort of breakdown of the amino acids inside that protein. So it sort of is quite versatile because it gives you some fast release, some medium, some slow, and usually just gives you a nice all round that you can use for a breakfast shake, for after pretty much anything throughout the day, baking, cooking, just an all round meal.
It is. It's really good. And the amino acid profile is complete, which is probably an important point, when we're comparing to some of the plant-based proteins and stuff. But I think even just from a user point of view, for me personally, like texture-wise, consistency-wise, whey trumps all else. If you're looking for something that's like a milkshake.
Yeah, it actually tastes on the point to what it says on the tub.
That's right.
It's always a blend.
You can't go past a good whey blend. And for me, a whey blend is really my go-to. It is, like you said, just so versatile. You can use it for anything you want because it does have that WPI in there anyway. You can still use it as a post-workout shake. And it just, to me personally, it's the king of kings. You know, I think all others, you know, although they might have something strong working in their favor, there'll be something else lacking, you know, whereas...
Yeah. So for example, and I, that's a good one actually. Let's look at proteins a little bit here, because this would be cool to give people, because you get asked, like when I was managing stores for a few years there too, I think I got asked so often, what's the difference with all these things? Why is there a million different things on the protein shelf? What's the difference? What can I use them for? So I guess we've done a really good job of explaining the whey blend. So that's a great all-rounder, covers most bases, fast, medium, and slow, thrown in the blend. That's just your good old faithful. So so the next most popular one, I guess we should explain, because a lot of our listeners, I mean, most will be familiar with it, but those who aren't, I guess isolates are up next.
Yeah, so, WPI. So you're going to see the letters WPI on your proteins a lot, and that doesn't mean much to a lot of people, but it stands for whey protein isolate. And the way that I usually explain this to customers is we have all whey proteins aren't created equal. Okay, so we have, like Will explained, in our blend, we have got all forms of whey protein blended together. And what we're really talking about with the difference, you know, if we're looking between an isolate, a concentrate, a caseinate, is the size of the molecule. So the particle size is the key difference. The rate of absorption as well. And that's where we look at the different grades of protein. So the lower end of the grades being your casein, moving your way up to the concentrates, up to the isolates, up to your hydrolyzed.
So walking through that basically filtration process, hey. So and I guess that's the other one. I guess the other thing you might see when you're looking at isolates. So as Stu said, the most processed, are the most refined, most pure. They're typically 85 to 92, 93% by weight pure protein, which leaves you pretty much no room for anything else when you throw flavorings on top. They're typically 0 to 1 gram of fat, 0 to 1 gram of carbs. They're literally just straight only protein. And
so this is when I sell this is what I say to someone. This is your next to no fat, sugar, carbs shake. If you want nothing. Now for me, all right, the trend that I've seen is a lot of girls, especially, some guys as well, but people are really chasing that. I want no fat, no sugar, no carbs, no calories. And, I think just the fact that we can say that excites some people. But if you look at the difference between how many calories you've got in a WPI versus a whey blend.
Yes, because we get this all the time with customers. They'll be like, oh, but this one has 2 grams of fat. That one says 0. I mean, well, that's 18 calories. Like, is that a big deal for you? Like, are you one day out from a show?
That's what I'm saying.
Is that really practically a big deal?
So I say the difference really in that facet is negligible. You do a star jump, you've burnt that up, right? So the difference is going to be negligible as far as, its capacity to, put fat on your body or something like that. But for me, the benefits that we get from the whey, as far as, that slower releasing protein, meaning that it's not as time crucial when we have it. The flavor is far better. You get that nice, thick, milky consistency from the blend that you get a much more waterier shake from the WPI.
And that's for people who are wondering why they just haven't found a good flavored isolate. It's not their fault. The fact that the companies are trying, there are great brands out there bringing out great quality products. The protein itself, got world standard usually. Some of the things you see in Australia and New Zealand. The problem is it's so refined and so pure, it's so hard to bind a flavouring agent to that. If it's 92% protein, and then you've got on there as well, so a little bit of stabilisers, it's quite tricky to get anything to bind to that. Whereas in a concentrate, you might have 72 to 78% protein, say. So you've got a little bit more wiggle room to allow flavourings, and you've probably got an extra gram or two of fats as well, which helps with mouthfeel and texture. And so you just got a bit more wiggle room. Whereas isolates are so refined and so pure, and so you really haven't got any room to play with to bind a decent flavouring to it.
So, but I think that isolates definitely have a place, and I think if you're like Will said, if you're prepping for a bodybuilding show and you're taking your shake at a time specifically when you know that your body's asking for protein, that's a great shake to have. That's a great post-workout shake if you really need, to have nothing in it but protein, or you're a really strict macro counter.
And you're really trying to squeeze the most out of that low-calorie diet. Like if you're on fair enough, a lot of females, if the bikini competitor, if you're only on 1,500, 1,600 cal, maybe the difference between 100 calorie and 120 or 130 is significant to your intake. You know, whereas if you're a dude bulking on 4,000 or 5,000 cal, then maybe 20 calories is neither here nor there. But in that low calorie scenario, spot on. We did forget that. Like if you're lower calories, everything counts. And isolates can be like, 100 calories for a 25 gram shake versus what, 124, 132, sort of that range for most blends. So that's a bit if you're on low cal. That's worth mentioning.
It's each to their own, but I really feel the key difference for the user is timing of the shakes. So WPI is very time critical. When you're consuming it is important. Whereas the whey blend, where you've got your WPC, WPI, casein, whatever it may be, it's very versatile. Time is not critical. You can have it whenever you want to have it. You can have it as breakfast, you can have it as a snack, you can have it as a post-workout shake. It really is a much more versatile shake. So less time critical. Let's look at, though, which is probably like one of the biggest trend changes in protein, is the movement towards plant proteins. And this is something that sparks a lot of arguments.
Huge change, isn't it? Because ever since Game Changers came out in particular, every retail store I speak to has just got slammed with customers coming in, ditching the meat, going for this plant-based lifestyle. And the inevitable question is, okay, so what do we got on the shelves that can fill this? And the plant-based protein space overnight, it felt like, went from probably one offering to now it's every brand almost has a plant protein, and we have to as a brand, almost now.
So I think the biggest thing to note, or some of the important points to note with a plant-based protein are, before this huge movement towards plant-based proteins, we really only had one byproduct compound that we could use for proteins, and it was from peas. So we had a lot of pea protein was the primary plant-based protein on the market before this huge movement. And pea protein, it's pretty good. If you look at the amino acid profile, it's pretty good for a plant protein, but it's not complete, and it doesn't have the amino acid profile of whey. And flavoring wise,
look, this is variable, right? I happen to be on the fence with plant proteins. Everyone bags the flavor, and they go, they're chalky consistency, they're crappy. Okay, they're not as good as they're not a milkshake. They're never going to be. But I like the fact that when you're on poverty calories, you throw in, they become quite thick and quite filling. They got a little bit of fiber naturally occurring, and they're a bit. That you feel like you've had almost like a meal when you have a plant shake. Yeah. That like when you're having a pea protein versus a whey, put that on your oats. It feels like you're having 4 cups of oats. So that just as a side. But amino acid wise, you're right. Leucine is lower. Yeah. So all your branched chains are lower versus say whey. But you're quite high in glutamine. Yes. So most of your plant-based sources are higher in glutamine, but they're lower in leucine. And I guess so in a post-workout setting, that's not as ideal. But for the other stuff, like our blend scenario,
that's the thing too, is that there is a way around it with plant-based protein, which is doing a plant protein blend. Now, I know White Wolf has done a really good one to complete the amino acid profile and actually make an amino acid profile that is as good or superior to whey, which is a combination of pea protein, watermelon seed protein, and pumpkin seed protein. However, these proteins need to be manufactured for the purpose of protein shakes, or these plant crops need to be made for the purpose of protein shakes. And so your shake becomes a lot dearer. So where price is a factor, all right, now you have a plant-based protein that can compete with whey as far as performance goes through the amino acid profile, but you cannot compete on price.
No, you can't.
So you're going to be paying more.
$20 more a kilo, in a lot of cases, which might 20-30% more in cost. So you might look at a difference of around a 20-30% mark, because it is such a new space. The market isn't quite isn't that huge on it yet, so it's still coming to fruition a bit. So you're still paying premium for it. It's like when creatine first came out. Like pumpkin and watermelon seed based protein is still a very new thing. So like you're still paying top dollar from your manufacturer to source that stuff. It's not readily available for as much as say a standard run-of-the-mill concentrate might be.
Yeah. So if you're looking at like a standard whey protein at the moment, standard pricing would be somewhere between sort of $59.95 up to sort of $69.95. So $60 to $70 is pretty standard pricing for a whey protein blend. If we look at a plant protein blend, we're looking at starting at sort of the sort of $80 mark and going up from there. Depending on the size of I'm talking like a 900 gram to a kilo protein.
Yeah, they're always $79.95, and they go up to the 5 pounders like $129, and your plant proteins sit I guess 69 for the 1 kilo, don't they? Instead of that sort of 59, 69, they're always 69, sometimes
more.
74.
Like we do a 1 kilo plant protein blend for $79.95, and that's really the only price that we can have it at to make any kind of a margin in it. So they are much dearer for us and for the consumer. So that's a factor, you know, when you're buying your supplements. I think that, you know, affordability is definitely something to consider, especially if you're getting a comparable product and it's much dearer.
Yep.
So it's like, what benefits am I taking from a plant protein? Why am I paying this much more?
It has to have a pretty strong driving factor behind it to sort of, you know, factor in the cost and the difference. At least now we've got the opportunity though to have them on par performance-wise. That's a good thing. Like if you break it down amino acid-wise, you can get it just as complete and have just the same effect. So that's cool. That at least we've gotten to a point now in the market where, you know, we as manufacturers can offer both and go, well, your consumer's going to have the same effect or similar effect in both. You know, that's cool. We didn't have that even a year ago. Hey, like
that's right. And also, I got to admit, the texture and consistency is improving.
Light years.
It's
light
improving.
Years ahead, mate.
It is improving. It used to be like you were literally take a shovel of sand and try and shake it up in water and mix that with some cat fur. And you know, you get that. They used to get that really furriness to the plant proteins with like that sandy, grainy texture in the bottom.
They've come a long way, haven't they? To their credit, they've come amazing. And they've put a lot more focus in that space because it's such a big demand. So I think the plant proteins were really worth touching on. And I think the other area that sort of really boomed in there would have to be probably the remaining guy, which is I guess the collagen space. And I guess to sort of put it in a neat little bow with all the offerings, you know, the wheys and their isolate, concentrate, blends, caseins, that sort of thing. You got your pea proteins, plant proteins, and you got the collagens, which are the final new, and again quite new again. Like
very new,
very new. Like 6 months, it's become a huge thing. 12 months maybe tops, it's become a really big focus for most people, and I think it's become more accessible for everyday people because a lot of people use it now for hair, skin, and nails, or for gut health, but it's quite an important part of throwing your macros for bodybuilders too.
Oh yeah.
As a protein, I didn't realize quite how impactful it was on things like fascia. When you look at how much fascia makes up, you know, fascia can be responsible for generating like 30% of a muscle's power because it's your anchor points. You know, its origin and insertion of each muscle is all based around tendons, around ligaments, around fascia. That's all built off a structural protein like collagen. So, you know, if you're supplementing with that in your diet, you're going to help give resources to build those, not just putting in amino acids for the meat so much, also everything that connects that meat and anchors it and makes it contract. So I see a big case put forward for bodybuilders too with collagen.
I think that something though that like to rewind back is I think a lot of people are confused about what collagen protein is. So let's make it clear first that collagen protein is generally from beef. It is not vegan.
It's not vegan.
Okay, it is not vegan. I had a customer who is vegan and come in and requested a specific collagen protein, and she said, "Do you have this collagen protein by this brand?" And I said, "No, I don't stock that brand, unfortunately." She said, "Oh, that sucks because I'm vegan and it's the only vegan protein that I like." And I said, "Well, unfortunately,
the poor dear. Sorry to ruin your day.
That is not vegan protein."
No.
And you know, being that she was a vegan for moral reasons, she was devastated because she'd been using it for some time. So I think it's really important for I think people working in the stores selling this stuff that they know as well that this stuff is beef protein. Okay, it's beef collagen. It comes from cows.
Yep.
It's not from a plant source.
And good actually pointing out because we've got the bovine collagen, so made from bones and ligaments and tendons and stuff, and we've also got marine collagen. Now this is something that we see in a lot of different places popping up now. So you've got, and actually I guess a third category recently that we've seen is naturally fermented, so the synthesized collagen, which is cool. So I guess technology's catching up. We are going to have a vegan collagen offering.
But when we look at if we're manufacturing something like that for the purpose of protein, you're going to be looking at a huge price tag. So if you guys don't know, whey is a byproduct of the cheese making industry, okay, or a byproduct of the dairy industry. It used to be waste product. and we started using it and refining it, and we were able to create this high protein leftover from the dairy industry into something that we could use for a protein shake. So the price is really reasonable. If we're specifically making something for our consumption, it becomes much, much dearer.
Yes.
So if we're doing things like refining a plant collagen down to something that we can use, the price is going to become...
It does. And especially in that sort of... So in the vegan-friendly collagen space, we've only just seen it in the last probably 3 months or so coming out, and they'll get the 3 main amino acids that make up collagen, so hydroxyproline, proline, and glycine, and they'll basically ferment them through from a naturally occurring bacteria or source or seaweed, in some manufacturer's case, to get you the amino acids that make up collagen just through a natural source, or through a synthetic, depending on how they're doing it. But you've still got, it doesn't come from an animal source, is the thing. But again, brand new technology, very expensive. But it's going to be an option very, very, very soon. Like it currently is.
Yeah. You can get it, just so you guys know. But it'll say very clearly on the packet that it's vegan collagen or plant-based collagen. If you're just buying a protein that generally says collagen protein, you can pretty much kind of guarantee that it's going to be either beef collagen or a combination of beef and marine collagen.
Spot on.
So just know that, guys. Now, it is the leanest of all forms of protein, right?
Hands down. And it's almost always pretty much just 100%. Like if you get just a straight unflavored collagen powder, it's usually, pretty much down on 96, 98% just straight protein. So compared to isolates before, where the best you can get out of a whey and still make it a flavored product is like, 92s, 93s at best. Collagen can literally just be straight, pure 100% hydrolyzed collagen and done unflavored, and you've got yourself the leanest of all of them. Like it literally is just 4 calories per gram, 20 gram scoop, 80 calories done. It's just there's zero anything else, and no allergens. People pretty much no one that I've seen before has had any real allergy issues with it. No. So it's hyperallergenic. It's got no issues with digestion. In fact, it helps to heal gut lining, and it's phenomenally good for that. So I guess actually let's look at some of the therapeutics on collagen, because it's different in a way, and it's different to plant protein. It works.
It's almost a category of its own, and it's being marketed in a very different way too. This is not real. Obviously, any cell replication is going to be able to use protein for proliferation, but there's some different purposes for collagen that you won't get from the other proteins.
Definitely. So you can almost think of like the other proteins as building blocks for everything, and then collagen's building blocks but for specific things. So it's a structural protein. The way that it's made, if you look at the structure of the molecule, it's very, very rigid, and it's made that's why it's made in things like hair, skin, nails. So you'll see it in a lot of those type products. Also helps to repair smooth muscle, so gut lining is a big one that's used for. So a lot of people who have got IBS or leaky gut, throwing in collagen at 15 grams with some glutamine, that heals gut lining amazingly. And then alternatively, tendons, ligaments, fascia, and other structural stuff as well is sort of the third category. Hair, skin, nails, gut, and tendons, ligaments.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the reason why it's become so popular, especially with the older female market who are really into kind of your anti-aging sort of field and that sort of thing. It's really getting big in that space, and I know that Faction Labs is actually releasing a collagen protein called Cougar. I don't know if you've seen that.
Cougar juice, it's gonna be.
It's
God, mate.
They love pushing the boundaries.
They're an edgy brand. Kind of props to them.
Hey, I think it's pretty obvious what the meaning is behind that, but hey, look, if you I guess identify with that category, then
hats off to them. They know their consumer, don't they? They know they're targeting. They just call it. And look, you got to mind that. You got to have some balls in this industry.
So, having kind of mentioned, I guess, all the main proteins available on the market, Will, and I know that I've already said that I primarily use a whey blend.
Yep.
What would you say is your go-to protein? Do you just use a specific one, or do you mix it up a bit? Or what
I mix it up because I heard some really interesting stuff on the thought that we have in our diet a lot of muscle meats, and this came from when the carnivore diet came out. And what I took away from it was that a lot of people who are getting around some of the issues they'd run into with carnivore. So obviously eating an only meat diet. The issue they'd find is, nutrients availability, and obviously they're not eating fruit or veg, so they found it hard to find nutrients, and they found it. So the way they got around that was eating a lot of organ meats and bone broths and stuff, and that got me looking into basically going into this whole space of the importance of collagen, because they think there's a bit of an imbalance between, if we're consuming just muscle meats, that amino acid particular profile versus those rich in your hydroxyproline, proline, glycine sort of setup. Your ratio of these guys to your muscle meats, to your collagens, is way out. Like, you've got almost no resources to rebuild some of that structural stuff, but you've got an abundance to play with for the rest. And so I sort of thought some of the guys like Ben Greenfield does a huge amount in this space, and he was saying like a quarter, 20% of your protein intake from a collagen-based source would be really good. So I've started using it, like, if I'm doing a post-workout now, I'll throw in, like, let's say it's 60 grams protein total. It might be 45 and 15. And I might try and aim, if I'm hitting 200 grams a day, I might try and aim, it's cost prohibitive, so probably like 30 grams a day of collagen, something like that, to throw in.
Yep.
The problem is you see it in a lot of formulations where people are using it, and I think it's good to show people that it's not quite. You can look at it as you need to put it in your diet as a resource and count it into your macros as that. When you see it in beauty products a lot, and it's like 500 milligrams, or like there are products that you'll see on supermarkets, and it literally will be like a collagen product for hair, skin, and nails, and it'll be literally half of 1 gram of collagen, like 500 milligrams, and you're like, well, you've got to treat it like protein overall. Like if you want to build muscle, you've got to have like your 1.5, 2 grams a kilo. Collagen's also you need a decent amount of it to 15 to 25% of your diet. So I've thrown it in now, and I'll have that in my post-workout, or in the morning with gut lining. If I'm having some gut issues, I'll use it in the morning. So mainly a blend, making one, that's a nice thing, and then a collagen as well, usually either first thing fasted to get the gut going, and then or post-workout is the go-to. But there is one last category though. Intra-workout, I throw in amino acids. But everyone asks this, customers ask me every goddamn day. They're like, well, if I'm having protein, do I need amino acids? What are these BCAAs? What's EAAs? Is EAAs better than BCAAs? Do I need them if I'm eating enough? Whole food, but all that stuff we hear all the time from customers. So I guess I've
got a really interesing stance on amino acids, and I think it's probably a different stance to you on amino acids.
Cool.
Let's look at what amino acids are for starters, just to like start at baseline so that everyone's familiar with where we are. So amino acids are basically the building blocks of proteins. So if we look at a protein molecule, it's essentially a combination of amino acids glued together by peptide bonds, right?
Yep.
We can take those amino acids from numerous sources and just take individual amino acids on their own. We call them free-form amino acids. And what we've discovered is that if we use certain combinations of these free-form amino acids together, we can improve performance, right? So I guess the first big movement was branched-chain amino acids, right? We looked at leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And we said, okay, we know that there's these essential amino acids that exist, but there's also these branched-chain amino acids. And these three are most crucial for building and repairing new muscle tissue.
Yep.
So if we take these on top of the protein that we're already consuming, we can improve our muscle growth, improve our rate of recovery, rate of repair, and we have this product called branched chain amino acids. But I think it's really important to note that branched chain amino acids were designed to be taken as well as protein.
Yes, because it's sort of like it's taking a piece of the pie that does a particular task in there, but you still need the whole pie to do all the tasks that protein does. So
that's right. So then what we did was we said, okay, well, if these three amino acids, these branched chain amino acids can improve performance, why don't we just take all 9 of the essential amino acids and let's put them in a product? And so we did that, and they're called we call them EAAs, essential amino acids. Now, these 9 are essential, okay, as the name suggests.
Yep, these have to be
you must have them, okay. So leucine, isoleucine, and valine on their own, they're not much good without the other 6, right?
Yep.
We need all of them in order for this process to happen. They all play a role. We identified that the 3 branched chain amino acids were most important, but we said there's 6 others that are pretty critical too. So let's make a product, call it EAAs, and then what we did was we compared EAAs to BCAAs. And of course, the EAAs outperformed the BCAAs.
But one thing we always hear, because we as manufacturers too, we tend to find that the BCA products therefore got thrown under the bus straight away. Now BCAAs are EAAs. just to clarify, of those 9, 3 of the 9 are the 3 amino acids that make up branched chain amino acids. So when someone's saying EAAs are better, EAAs are BCAAs plus 6 more. So they both are each other. But like Stu said before, the 3 in the branch chain configuration, that's why it's called that. It's literally the shape of a branch. Those 3, leucine, isoleucine, isovaline. Those 3 basically switch on mTOR the most. So that's our main flicking the switch in the body to turn on muscle protein synthesis. So MPS, right? So you're switching on, going to your body, turn protein to muscle. That's why branched amino acids are great. They say turn this over, kickstart it. The other amino acids are important because you feed them in. It's like starting a car with no fuel. So you can turn the engine over, but if there's no fuel in the lines, it won't work. So you need to feed in the other amino acids to do the work of what the others do. So the more you've got, what we're seeing in the studies is the more you throw in, and there's like 24 amino acids, the more you throw in, the better this whole picture looks. Because you're just putting in things that do more and more jobs in the whole Krebs cycle, in muscle recovery and detoxification, all these things. So they find that the more you've got, it just makes sense. But that's the main difference, is that you've just got EAAs, you've contain the BCAAs.
All 9, you've got 3 of those 9. And so to even make the effort to do a study to compare the two is pretty ridiculous, in my opinion, because if you've already got those 3 in the 9, the EAAs, of course, are going to outperform the BCAAs. But does that mean there's no place for BCAAs? Well, personally, I use BCAAs, and the reason is that I consume regular protein shakes, and and I guess this is the area of debate. Do we get enough of if we're already supplementing with protein?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the big if. If you're already supplementing with protein, do we already get enough of the other 6 contained within the protein molecule? And is it worth adding an EAA for the extra price you pay for the EAA versus the BCAA? Now, for me, I take the BCAA for value for money.
Yep.
Because it's going to be cheaper. All right, you're going to get
every day of the week.
3 versus 9. It's going to be cheaper.
Yep.
So I take the BCAAs with the confidence that I'm getting enough of the other 6 contained within the protein molecule. Now, were I not consuming protein, 100% hands down, I would go for the EAA. Okay, but because I'm already supplementing with protein, I personally choose the BCAA for price point.
Yep.
And I feel like that gives me, I'm balancing 2 things, I guess. I'm balancing what am I looking at spending and how much extra performance am I getting out of adding the extra 6 if I'm already using enough protein.
And applying that logic to the protein question overall, if we've got someone coming in who's new to the game, if they have $50 to spend as their introduction to supplements, they'd be better off spending that on a straight whole protein, a whey blend like we spoke about before, then probably an amino acid product straight out of the gate. Because we're going to assume that person, probably if they're new to training, they're probably not eating enough dietary protein outside of that. So, that's just, if you find someone who's brand new, who isn't looking at what they're eating, who isn't having 3, 4, 5 meals of meat each day to sort of, hit their daily protein intake, probably a shake is your best priority. But in saying that, most of our clientele are already doing that. They're already looking at their food. They're already eating a high protein diet. They've got their shake covered for their post-workout, if it's throughout the day as part of their just overall calories for the day. Those amino acids are super useful in the time of training, performance, and they all fit in a nice piece of the puzzle. So that's sort of how they all work together. The protein, it just adds to your daily protein target. And then amino acids are more very specific, aren't they?
That's right.
They're there for performance. They're there to stop muscle breaking down during intense exercise. They're there to to basically help with recovery. They're there to help facilitate basically better performance and recovery in the gym. Whereas the other ones are more towards contributing towards your daily nutrient needs.
The daily macro intake, right? This is a complete protein. It's those amino acids being glued together in these peptide bonds. The breakdown of a whole protein is different to the way that we use the free-form amino acids. There's some different reactions that happen in the body when we break down a whole protein. So we do need whole proteins in our diet. We can't just get by on amino acids alone. Now, here's, I guess, another scenario. If money is no object, I'm going to take the essential amino acids all day long. Okay, so because it's an insurance policy, it's right. All right, maybe these extra 6 are going to benefit me over the amino acids and the 9 that and the extra 6 that I'm already getting in the protein molecule, I may as well buy the essential amino acids if money is no object.
And if it's an extra 5% day in, day out over a comp prep is a big difference. That can be, first and third on stage. I guess if you're looking at just the fundamentals of what's going to do the best work, your gold standards is sort of a WPI after a workout is perhaps the gold standard. No papers are refuting that. It beats usually whole meat-based protein sources too, just because one, faster absorption, and the amino acid profile is pretty much just the gold standard in the game. Something purified that much has an amazing amino acid profile, heaps of leucine, it's cool. Intra-workout, an EAA product all day long. BCA though will get the job done, and if you're budget conscious, it'll do it significally cheaper, and it will still
provided you're already using a protein.
Provided you've already got adequate dietary protein as well. Otherwise, again, you can almost use that EAA, throughout the day if you're a tradie, or if you're not enough protein, it can help to hold you over, between meals, or help offer some resources to build some muscle. So a lot of tradies and stuff, people with physical jobs, carpenters, labourers, those sort of people who are very active, burning a lot and trying to maintain muscle.
Right, and you'll find a lot of the EAA blends now have electrolyte mixes and stuff in them too.
Massively.
There's other things in there that those tradies and stuff are going to benefit from. So, I think that the attitude towards just poo-pooing BCAAs and saying, no, EAAs are superior, this is not news.
No.
You know what I mean? Anyone could have told you that, 10 years ago or more. 20 years ago, all the 9 EAAs are going to be better than 3 of those EAAs.
Makes perfect sense. More is better. But and one other thing on amino acids now, the other thing is that people tend to think that these have no calories. They tend to use them throughout prep, and they'll put down 3-4 scoops a day because you're just looking for flavour. And when you're dieting hard, everything tastes sweet is nice, and you might throw in a few scoops a day in your water, try and get water intake up. Life's good, it helps. But it does have calories. It is still 3 to 4 calories per gram, depending what study you read. So you're still looking at, pretty much treat it like it contributes to your protein intake. In the case of the essential amino acids in particular, we've got 9 of them. So if you're having 10 grams of amino acids, that's 40 calories. Now, if you're in 2-3 serves a day, that can bump up 100-120 cal to your total. Just keep it in mind. Again, those bikini competitors and stuff that sip on it in their water all day to get their water intake up, and they're putting in an extra 100-150, that can be up to 10% of calories that they're on in peak week and stuff like that. So it's just another thing we see is customers don't always take it into account as a thing. It does have calories, it does have a profile on it, so just keep that in mind. But you can also count it towards protein.
So I think I guess in summary, in the BCAA, EAA debate, I think it really depends on what you're looking for. Who you are, what you're using it for, what your budget is. So I don't think that, it's right or wrong to take one or the other. I think that they both have a place, and it really just depends on what you're after, what you're trying to do, how much you're willing to spend.
It'll still kick over mTOR. Your BCAAs will still kick over mTOR, still get muscle protein synthesis happening, which switches off those catabolic processes in the muscle. It'll at the very worst, your body will use it as a fuel source very readily. Leucine is very insulinogenic. It'll eat it. It'll pump it straight to the Krebs cycle. So you can use it as fuel straight away. So worst case scenario, if you're at a calorie deficit, if you want to promote muscle recovery, BCAAs, EAAs, they'll perform a similarly great task at stopping that. So they're both going to work. One's more comprehensive, but comes with a price tag to reflect it. But you can sort of also use EAAs as a bit of a holdover between meals.
You can use them as a bit of a protein replacement almost. And some companies have. You'll see things like Synthapro and things that come out over the years
what
where
it's called HumaPro. ALR. Yeah, that was the
HumaPro.
It was literally a complete. All it was just protein, all the amino acids combined in the same ratio you'll see in human muscle tissue, which is really cool as a complete amino acid, and they use that instead of protein. The founder of that apparently, that's all he ate for protein. He cut out all meats and animals, all actual protein, and lived off that as his sole protein source. Which, if you think of what that would do for the amount of calories you could then have for everything else, and burden on digestion, think how many carbs you could put down if you didn't have to put 1,000 calories a day into protein. But
I'd prefer to see my clients and customers using a whole protein in their diet. But hey, once again, each to their own.
Yeah, there's extremes. Some people like to live on powder. That's okay.
Let's talk on creatine, Will, because I think that this is probably one of the most confused products on the market as far as the customer or the consumer is unsure of what it does. I get a lot of people coming in and I'm like, so, all right, are we using it? I almost assume that everyone's using creatine now. Just because I'm like,
it's a baseline assumption, isn't it?
I'm like, well, why wouldn't you be? But I think that I've had a lot of people come in here and when I say to them, which creatine are you using? And they say, I don't use creatine. I'm kind of like,
but why? Like, it is a
why
new
not?
thing, isn't it?
It's that cheap and it's that effective. But then they say to me, doesn't it just put water in your muscles?
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about why we actually use creatine and what it does.
Creatine's hectic, because it works. The more I read into it, it seems super simple at the surface, and then it keeps getting cooler. So like you'll see, basically you've got like ATP is our body's energy currency, and adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphate bonds. The way that our body will produce energy off that will be ATP goes to ADP, strips out a phosphate bond. So it goes from a triphosphate to a diphosphate, and you lose a phosphate bond in the Krebs cycle. Creatine donates a phosphate bond back in. Instead of it going to ADP, it gets recycled back and goes back to ATP. You gain another phosphate, di goes back to tri, and you've got this beautiful completed energy production. So basically, when they say it helps with energy production, endurance, all that, because it makes your body's energy currency get made faster, makes it bounce back quicker, makes the Krebs cycle work more efficiently.
Yep.
So overall, that's the basis.
So the goal,
fundamentals.
That's right. So the goal is more ATP, and people say, well, what is more of this adenosine triphosphate? What does that actually mean for me? Well, the simplest way I can put it is more endurance and more output in the gym. More power and more endurance in the gym. More ATP equals more cellular energy. Now, this confuses a lot of people. I say to them, we're going to give you, by taking creatine, we're going to increase production of ATP, or we're going to improve the recycling process of the phosphate so that you have more usable ATP. And I say it's going to give you more cellular energy. There's a very common misconception about energy because we use the word energy for a couple of different things. When we talk about energy to the customers, they think of stimulants.
Yeah, they think of like noticeable flick on energy. It's
energy, or what I call like synthetic energy, right? Caffeine, all these synthetic compounds that we use, or natural compounds that we use to trigger a central nervous system response that makes you feel as though you have more energy. Okay, this is not the kind of energy that we're talking about. We're talking about real, usable cellular energy. You're going to feel really nothing.
That's a really good point, man. I hadn't, and it's taken like a decade of reading to come back full circle to realize if you are training, I used to train fasted because I was always up with mining. I was up at 3 a.m. and trying to eat at 3 a.m. was just non-negotiable, right? But I also happen to I utilize fats pretty well, so I train pretty good fasted. But what I realized is for years you go, okay, I'll train fasted, dump a pre-workout, and that'll get me through. And you go, I've got plenty of energy. If you're asking your body, like the laws of thermodynamics, energy can't be destroyed or created, right? You can't just, if you're not putting any physical calories in, if there's no energy resources being put in, and you're asking your body just to produce energy from somewhere, it's synthetic energy, it's artificial, it's adrenaline fueled, right? It's not true energy as the form. So when we're talking about the differences in energy as well, cellular energy is your body making ATP as part of the Krebs cycle to give your muscle actual resources to burn to produce energy. If you are training fasted, you're dumping stimulants, relying on that to get you through. It might be time to look at, how's your overall nutrition looking. If you're in a calorie surplus, cool, you're all good, glycogen is full, good to go. But just something that I've only just really put into my own head recently is that. Like if you're asking it to create energy from nothing in your body, if you're putting a 0-calorie drink in, a Red Bull, a pre-workout, a thermo, whatever, if it has 0 calories, no carbs, no fats, nothing for you to actually create energy from, and you get energy, you get an arousal, then that is, it's not true energy.
That's right. It's literally just it's almost like a trick, right? It's like it's like fooling your body into thinking that there's something there that when there's not. There's no real cellular energy there. And I think that's really the only way to, we see performance increases from that kind of energy as well.
Oh, definitely.
From that synthetic energy, we see performance increases because the focus is increased, the intensity is increased.
Yep.
It's more of a mindset trigger than anything else. But when we're talking about cellular energy and we're talking about real power, real endurance, and real output, that's what creatine is going to do. It's going to increase cellular energy. Now, the other question that I get asked when I explain that is, I don't want extra energy. I train at night, Stu. I don't want extra energy. It's like, once again, it's not the kind of synthetic energy that's going to have you sitting up staring at the ceiling. Okay,
No.
That's not what ATP does. It's, forget about this concept that you have of this central nervous system trigger where you feel wired. Okay,
Yep.
That's really not energy.
No, that's more arousal.
Exactly.
That's more mental arousal. And that's when you look at like nootropics, and we'll see customers come in who are, you have a nootropic with 100 milligrams of caffeine, and you're lit up like a Christmas tree. Put 300 caffeine in a drink, you're cool for half an hour, but then it eventually dumps off. But for a nootropic, you can have hours of energy from very low stimulant use, and again, no actual calories. And that's mental arousal. In the absence of, and that's where fat burners are so useful during dieting and stuff. Is you can feel like a normal person whilst on poverty calories, so they've got their uses for sure. Like caffeine's got infinite studies showing how good it is for performance all day long.
And even fat loss. I think that's, we'll get into caffeine in a minute after we finish on creatine, but I really want to talk about the legitimate studies showing caffeine's ability to help increase the basal metabolic rate and all sorts of other things. But
cool.
I just wanted to, just on creatine as well, I wanted to address that whole water holding thing with creatine. So creatine has some other functions. And one of those is driving nutrients into the muscles. And creatine will drive glycogen into the muscles, it will drive certain amino acids into the muscles, but it will also force a little bit of fluid into the muscles.
It will, yep.
Now, I think that's actually not a bad thing.
That's fantastic.
People think of holding water as subcutaneous water, and that's not what creatine's going to do. It's not going to give you that watery look that you get when you've got edema. It's going to be intracellular water that you're holding in your muscle. It's just going to make your muscle appear larger. Since when was that a negative thing?
Oh, no, it's beautiful stuff. And a muscle that's hydrated and is a muscle that works efficiently, a muscle that strips out waste faster, a muscle that puts nutrients in faster, better blood flow. Like, if you've got a well-hydrated muscle, everything runs better. Like, we've all seen the studies when they say if you're dehydrated by even 2%, you can drop power output by 30%. So imagine something that hyperhydrates your muscle. It oversaturates your muscle with water. Like, it's phenomenal for performance. Like, that's a big driver of performance around creatine, not just making your body produce the ATP better, but also saturating that muscle and keeping it hydrated so it has maximal ability. Because everything in our body is electrical, right? So it's always electrical impulses. For our body to increase contractile force in a muscle, it has to send a signal from our brain down to those neurons to fire. It's all electric, so it needs hydration to facilitate that. It needs water. It's water-based. We're very, very much water-based animals. So it's conductive and it's a good medium. So a hydrated muscle has great signaling, has great nerve function, contractile function, better for risk of injuries and all that sort of jazz as well. Really, really crucial. That point is super beneficial, but everyone freaks out about water retention.
Yeah, dude, this is not subcutaneous water we're talking about. This is intramuscular, intracellular water that we want there, and it's going to make you look bigger.
It is.
Hey, that's a good thing. And the other thing is too, creatine is cheap as shit.
And it works. It's cheap and it works.
It's cheap. It works. There's more studies to back creatine than pretty much any other compound we have at our fingertips.
It always seems to me that it comes from, we owe a lot to cattle and livestock, hey? It always seems to me that everything that's ever put mass on bodybuilders, put it on cows first. So like Trenbolone, all the cool stuff. Creatine was the same. Original studies as early as like 1905 and like the late 1890s were done on creatine for putting weight on cattle. So if you could put weight on a 700 kilo animal, you could probably do it with us and need us eating grass. So we got a bit more nitrogen floating around in our diet. So it's pretty amazing at what it can do. And the amount of, it's had, literally over 1,000 studies done on it. And it had something like a 96% showing that it was positive for performance, for growth, just all around great stuff. You'll also see it recently mentioned in the brain as well as a thing. Now, something that I didn't realise until in recent times was the brain actually also runs on ATP. The brain eats about 25% of your body's glucose demands. It's a glycolytic animal. It likes to run on glucose, carbs, ATP, Krebs cycle, that whole thing. So feeding in creatine does help also production of ATP in your brain. So it's also useful as, not the way an nootropic works, but it helps also with your brain's production as well of energy. So it's got another useful benefit of being good for brain health. So
it's like for like $25 a tub.
Oh, it's mad.
If you're not using it, like, there's something wrong with you.
Sort it out. It's going to work for everything, man. It's neuroprotective, beautiful stuff, performance, energy, hydration. I think creatine's got a lot of attention, and it's rightly so. It's so cheap, works like. And for how cheap it is, you just might as well try it.
Well, that's what I say too. Like, let's say you want to totally ignore the data. Let's say you just want to ignore the science altogether. Just take it out of superstition,
just give it a crack. It's so cheap.
As well.
it's absurd. Like a 500 gram tub, you might use 5-10 grams a day.
It's going to last you a while.
It's 100 serves. You got like 3 months supply for $30. Like, Christ, if you can't do $10 a month for to give something just to go out on a whim, I think is it?
Well, I'll tell you something, Will. That's one supplement that I've never trained without, like pretty much since starting. Once I discovered creatine, I have always had it in my stack.
Man, it's what I built, and it's a lesser known. Like, I guess looking at that muscle volume and that muscle, that fluid thing for pumps, it's so underrated for pumps. Man, like when I built Grind originally, like I put creatine wasn't in many pre-workouts at all recently. It used to be back in like the Synth 6 days.
When your tub was this big,
the
creatine was in everything
and stuff like that. There was always creatine in there, and they used things like sodium bicarbonate as buffers. It had heaps, like they used to look at performance more than arousal. Now, but when I put like my pre together, creatine, that's the base of it because it works for pumps, endurance, power, works for everything. Like
it's just such a good compound to use, and get using it. If you're not using it, get using it. I'm talking to you.
Creatine, final word. So creatine, we can go thumbs up. Creatine, good. We've done it. So we've done our proteins, we're cool. Amino acids, we've found out to go. Creatine, no brainer.
I want to talk a little bit more about caffeine because caffeine, it spans across so many categories, right? We're talking fat burners, we're talking pre-workouts, we're talking nootropics. It's like caffeine, even some amino acids they're putting caffeine in now. You've got like amino energy and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about the benefits of caffeine outside the fact that it makes you feel wired.
Actually, you know what? I might even look at how it, what it does in the body too.
Yeah.
Because it'd be really cool, because caffeine's a bit of a misunderstood creature, but it is phenomenal stuff. So I guess, like you said, increase alertness, increase base metabolic rate, increase performance. It's an ergogenic aid. Best use, so if we look at dosages too, that's a big one. So you see it in wildly different doses on everything. You might see it from as little as 50 milligrams in a supplement up to bloody 450 now. Now, I guess to give a ballpark to people, for performance, most of the studies are saying 2 to 4 milligrams per kilo of body weight. So to break that down, 100 kilo dude, 2 milligrams per kilo, so 200 milligrams to 400 milligrams is sort of the range that they recommend is where you get the maximum ergogenic dose. There is a sort of a curve on it, like most things, where you get over a certain point, and there's no
point of diminishing returns.
Point of diminishing returns happens, So 800 milligrams isn't twice as good as 400. It'll just ruin your life. So
I think that's an important note. Just while we're on that, Will, is that caffeine really needs to be respected. She can be a harsh mistress if you don't respect caffeine. If you think that caffeine, just because it's common, is like something that should be messed around with, think again. You really need to respect caffeine, because not only can that shit make you feel pretty bad, that can kill you. It's something to be really respected, and
it's the most, I guess it's the basis of the felt part of our supplements experience. When we're having pre-workouts and fat burners for the very first time, that's obviously part of the whole picture. And I guess but it does have some other sort of side effects. So I guess people tend to think of having that instant energy as a constant, just a never-ending well that you can draw on. It is important to notice that it does impact on a lot of other areas. It can impact your recovery, your sleep, your stress hormones massively. So you're sort of robbing from your future self in a lot of ways, particularly in your dieting and stuff. It's something to look out for. Just before we delve into how great it is, disclaimer: it's great to an extent, but let's keep it like relative, right? So 2 to 4 milligrams per kilo, taken in a performance enhancement context, cool. Fat oxidation. I read this cool study yesterday showing how drastic it was. They showed it was, but interestingly enough, basal metabolic rate on 0 to 3 milligrams per kilo was with about a 15-20% increase.
It's highly dose dependent.
It's very high dose dependent. But anything over 3 and super, so up to 3, so they had it on a 100 kilo person, so up to 300 milligrams. So 0 to 300 did a moderate effect on it. It was a difference of like 100 calories a day or something, which is still solid if you're in a deficit. And then you go to 300 plus milligrams, And straight away it skyrocketed, nearly doubled the 0 to 300 model, and then the 600 milligram model, which I wouldn't use it, but
wouldn't go up there.
But it doubled it again.
Yeah.
Now, but that seemed to be where the curve peaked out. Now, I wouldn't recommend ever using, and these were in acute single doses. So I having 600 megs in one dose, you would have a horrific experience. But it'd be for the purpose of the data, it works. But you will be burning fat fat oxidation went up like. Oh God, it was like 4 times the 0 to 300 model.
Yeah, and that's what I love. You know, like caffeine, you get a lot of people poo-pooing fat burners or weight loss support supplements, whatever you want to call them. But, you know, if you look at what's contained in them, if that product even has caffeine in it at above 300 milligrams, you can safely say that this is an effective weight loss aid. You know, and that's data backed. So you can say whatever you want. You can say, oh, fat burners don't work or whatever you want to say. But if you're picking up any fat burner and it has above 300 milligrams of caffeine per serve, you can say that it's going to have an effect on your ability to lose weight.
Definitely.
You know, a positive effect. So I think that, you know, and we have many other compounds at our fingertips that we've got, you know, stacks of data behind as well. But caffeine, it's in everything. So it's definitely worth mentioning that. You know, and I think that if anyone wants to get into a debate about whether fat burners are legitimate or not, all you got to do is just pull up caffeine and you already win the debate.
It does, but beta fat oxidation is really quite elevated on it. So that's an interesting one. It does do it in a funny way though. The way that it sort of works, caffeine enters usually the length of the system, and it goes through your detox pathways. Funny enough, so your body tries to break it down as through first pass metabolism. So your phase 1 detox, like your cytochrome P450 enzymes and stuff, and they break it down into your xanthines, and I guess you also get in things like coffee as a source. So if you're looking at natural caffeine sources, you'll get things like theobromine too, which is great for mood. It's why when you have coffee, you get naturally occurring theobromine, amazing for mood as well as, you know, the actual ergogenic effects of the caffeine. Coffee is actually a really good example. We should probably chat that, because when you say caffeine, it's synonymously, most people's first introduction is coffee. It's their first thing. You know, it's only because we've been in this so long, we think of every supplement under the sun. But like, I guess the person walking off the street, probably their interaction with caffeine is coffees and Red Bulls, right? So you got natural and synthetics, and that's a really good thing. So synthetics, what are the ones you like, and what do you see often?
Look, anhydrous is probably the most common one that we're going to see in the synthetic field, and that's really what I guess have probably played with most as far as formulations and stuff like that.
Very, very safe sort of guy that's used heaps, standardized. It's a trimethyl xanthine. So we said it breaks down its first pass to a xanthine group. This is that bound to 3 methyl groups, so it's a very fast absorbing. It's the fastest. So, you know, apart from citrate, you get a really fast spike out of caffeine anhydrous. I think it's like 0 to 40 minutes is its peak.
And that's probably why it's used in a lot of pre-workouts, right? People want something that's going to punch straight away.
Kick straight fast. So if it's your fast release synthetic caffeine, same thing used in Red Bull and that sort of thing. Anhydrous is like your most stable, readily used, most commonly seen guy floating around. That's, you know, there's your dicaffeine malates as well.
Yep.
There's caffeine citrates. Basically, there's faster or slower release rates. So, but whatever the caffeine is bound to, or whatever form it's in, will dictate how fast it breaks down in your body through that sort of detox pathway, and that just dictates its length of life. So, on average, out of all the forms, caffeine's average half-life is 4 to 5 hours, which is super important. Like, I guess I do a lot of talks on the adrenal stuff. People tend to, like, you think if you have a coffee at 2 p.m., you're like, oh yeah, cool. Well, if in 4 hours later, let's say a coffee has, you know, 100 milligrams of caffeine, fat burners are up around the 300 milligram mark. 4 to 5 hours later, so 6, 7 p.m. at night, you're still up around the 50 milligram mark of just a coffee. You know, or alternatively, if you had a fat burner, you can be up around 150 megs. The same as having a double shot coffee worth of caffeine in your system at 7 p.m. that night. And they wonder where the sleep issues are. They go, oh, I cut caffeine after 2 p.m. Well, you know, if you've got a 10-hour total life, you really need to be more respectful of it and bump that back probably, depending when you go to bed. That's just something that I always sort of...
100%. And, you know, like these stimulants that we're talking about, you know, caffeine, even if you're talking about natural caffeine, they have an effect on your adrenal system, so they have an effect on your sleep. And, you know, we have talked time and time again about the importance of sleep. And it's this balance that we try and play when we're formulating, right? Because we love caffeine. We love using it. We want to use it in We want to use it at the highest dosage we can that gives a positive feel and outcome. But we also don't want to trash your adrenal system. And then we're trying to kind of mend some of that with.
Oh, it is. It's so hard because when you're making 50 fat burners where you've got that delicate edge, if you can assume someone's using a fat burner, they're probably dieting, so they're probably in a calorie deficit, right? Now, as soon as you put someone in a calorie deficit, their basal stress goes up anyway by default because you've got, an energy deficit. It has to pull that artificial energy from somewhere, right? So it leans on your adrenals quite a bit. Throw in a stimulant on top, and even though, like we said before, there's, a 300 milligram, bolus dose of caffeine will jack up fat oxidation, but it will also jack up cortisol. It'll also jack up all your adrenal axis, which in itself happens to really play with blood sugar, really start to drive down fat oxidation and start burning muscle instead. So there's a whole...
There's a tightrope that we walk with everything.
It's a very fine line. And everyone has
there's the yin and the yang, and it's like, you're balancing there. You're trying to figure out and the other thing that I'm trying to do a lot of times when I formulate now is I'm trying to think about what is your average supplement consumer already using. And that's something that's really... it's hard because there's so many different options out there, and you're trying to go, all right, well, if I'm developing, an adrenal product, and my user is already using a standard pre-workout, potentially a standard fat burner as well, and I'm trying to balance that out, but then, you don't want to go over the top where if someone's not using those two things,
you miss out. I really find that hard because I've spoken with some other mates in this, like Greg with Hageland, who was on one of our earlier episodes from Switch. He was the same, and he formulates everything to work off his other, like everything to bounce off each other, and you do that a lot with.
I'm the same.
labs.
I don't have any crossover ingredients for that reason.
Yep, and it's really and then I go for ones where I'm like, if this is the first time someone's used a product and that's all they use, then it has to do the job as well. So it's really hard to try and formulate, and everyone has their own different approaches because it's so hard to know what an average consumer might be using. Like you said, a 300 milligram dose of caffeine is high, but if they're not having anything else that day, that might be perfect, sweet, bang on. Or alternatively, they might be having a pre and a fat burner already, and you're just putting it right into a bad place. You don't know. Like we really, so like I guess that's where the beauty of retail is, that you can like sit down with someone,
direct people a little bit.
People. Like that's why I always go brick and mortar, because I find like that over online, so many customers come in, they've gone, I tried a fat burner once, I bought it off a website, tried it, and I was sick, and I felt nauseous, or I had to, and I felt sick and shaky for a whole day, and I hated it. Threw it. I had one serve, threw it in the bin, never had them again. They have these terrible experiences. Right, caffeine is super. Like the normal person who might have a coffee or two a day, you ask them, you might walk into a sup store or look on some of these, sites and find a product that might have the equivalent of 4 shots of caffeine. I can guarantee most people aren't having quadruple shot coffees yet.
Depends who you are.
Depending on what you're doing in life, in a single serve, like that's, no one orders 4 coffees and just puts them all down and then he feels great, like first off the bat. So it's also something you build up tolerance to as those pathways get better at breaking it down. And it is good to note, there are certain people who are just very slow caffeine metabolizers, and there's fast caffeine metabolizers too. So, there's people who break it down super fast and they're just freaks. And then there's others who also can have, we all know them, they'll have a cup of tea and they're jittery for 6 hours.
They have a coffee in the morning and they can't sleep that night.
Yeah, spot on. And you'll see it in the occasional customer. They'll normally let you know because they're usually very vigilant with it. They figured it out by now. But that's also another thing. It is genetic variability. Some people break it down heaps faster. Some people break it down slower. So you've really got to play with what you like and start lower rather than higher, or always go down to...
Yeah, that's it. Start low, start at none, work your way up.
Yep.
Start off with a non-stim pre-workout and then, slowly work your way up through them. But, I think that probably caffeine is probably a good note for us to end on, because it's one of those ones that, like you said, there was a lot of question marks out there about, and I hope that we've really answered a lot of those question marks in this little discussion that we've had. I'm sure that you guys, whether you're a store owner or whether you're a listener to our podcast, you've got some value out of this episode. But maybe just let us know, like Will and I, we're still new to this. We're still kind of figuring out what you guys like, what content we want to put out there. maybe you have some questions about supplements. Maybe you have a topic you want us to tackle.
Definitely.
Shoot us a message. Put a comment on, whether it's on our YouTube channel or whether it's
on Insta, just shoot us DMs. Like we'll just you and I are just people. We just have. If you want to shoot us a message, ask us any questions around supps. By all means, this thing is the Wot Supp podcast. After all, we are here to understand all things about supplements as well as fitness and business. So. Lately we've been doing more focus on the fitness and business aspect, and now it's a great opportunity to get in whilst we're in Stu's actual supplement store, get into the trenches and actually look at just the classics, the protein powders, the creatines, the caffeines, how they work, why you use them, how to use them. And I think we're going to try some more deep dives like this in just the straight supplement parts, going back to our roots would be good for future episodes too.
Definitely. So we're definitely don't worry. We're not abandoning the supplement path for anyone who's watched recent episodes. We're definitely still the Wot Supp podcast. We will be getting business guests and stuff like that on still. So I know some of you love those episodes. Some of you love the deep dives. We're going to try and do a mix of everything for everyone. But yeah, let us know. Give us some feedback, guys. Hey, leave a review on our channels. Follow our channels. Give us a subscribe. That stuff all is fantastic, and it really kind of signals to us that you guys enjoy what we're doing.
Beautiful. No, 100%, mate. So let's there'll be more of these in the very near future. We'll be throwing around some great more content in the supplement sides. But again, like, subscribe, give us some feedback, and can't wait to bring more content your guys' way.
Thanks, Will.
Beautiful. Pleasure, Stu.